Yeah. So he actually defines what the left is the people who want to have a whole new society. In other words, a revolution. In other words, Marxists.
When does it end
hold on,
in
hold
his
on
theory?
Hold on there a minute, good sir. I would like a whole new society.
Well,
I would like constitutional the Constitution to be upheld.
Mm-hmm.
I would like the Federal Reserve to be, not. I would like our system of governance to actually be representative. I would say that I consider myself to be particularly revolutionary in that our system is broken in a large variety of ways, and I think most Trump supporters agree with that.
Yeah, that's
Only
because
thing
MAGA is class consciousness.
Right. The only thing is, I don't think we should be like, I don't know, burning it down and killing people
No.
and smashing windows. We should be like, going through paperwork and being like, hey guys, I think this would work better, and then we say, all right, let's give it a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, MAGA is class consciousness. Marx, turns out, surprisingly, wasn't totally wrong. Marx believed that when capitalism reached an advanced enough stage, when it reached a late enough stage, it would seize so much control and become so corrupt that eventually the working class would awaken and realize, hey, wait, we are being screwed over by the power elite, and we need to seize the means of production, etc. The problem was Marx thought what the working class would want is equity. Everybody made equal, everything shared equitably. What it wants is freedom. The human spirit cries to freedom. It does not cry to let's share all of our crap. It cries to freedom.
He was not a smart man.
Marx?
Yeah, Marx.
No, not particularly. He's also a very entitled, spoiled brat man. He spent down his parents' money. He spent down his wife's family's money. He spent down Engels' money. When Engels did not marry we'll say love of his life. I don't know. They lived together 20 years relationship. She dies, right? Marx writes a letter to Engels, who's his cash cow. And in this letter, he writes a couple of sentences at the beginning like, oh, that's sad. I'm sorry to hear that. And then he writes 30-something sentences about his financial problems and could you send a check to Engels when this love of his life died. That's the letter he sends. And so much so that Engels, who's basically been like his little like lapdog on a leash this whole time, is like, oof, bro, not even. By the way, here's your check. Because total cuck. But he was not a good guy. He was not a good guy.
But think about it. Doesn't he represent the modern left in so many ways, like very well?
No, exactly. He's just like them.
Exactly, and then
or
that's
they
why,
are just like him.
right,
Yeah,
right. They are the children of his entitled and ignorant and naive ideology.
That's right.
It's when you think about the universe and what it takes to create and survive and to maintain, you have a very different worldview. But when you're born into luxury and you don't understand, like I view it as somebody who understands physics and they understand the building blocks of reality, and physicists tend to. Then they have a general understanding of how things are connected and what you need to make a certain thing work. But then imagine you have like a 5th grade science teacher who doesn't know anything about physics because he's just got hired for the job and they put him in the science department, and he doesn't understand what he's talking about. He's like, I should be able to do this and it should work, and it doesn't. He doesn't understand the underlying principles that make a machine work. When you have people who are born into luxury, they don't understand the base components of existence, of an economy, of hard work, of what made the economy good, family structure, for instance. So they say, well, now that we're floating on top of this cloud well above where all the worker bees are, what do we want? If you grow up, if you develop your mind without seeing the hard work required to maintain, then you will not advocate for its maintenance.
That's right.
And that's what Marx says.
It's not hard to get food. It's just at the grocery store.
Yep.
And that's exactly what people said to me when I criticized UBI.
Yeah.
When they were shutting down these stores and from COVID, I actually had a guy tweet at me. I said, the dairy farms are dumping the dairy because they can't get the processing plants to take it, because the processing plants can't get the plastic cartons, and the cartons aren't being made. The whole economy is sludged up. And then I said, so when this all shuts down, where do you get your milk from? And I actually had a guy on Twitter say, what do you mean, the grocery store? And I said, where does the grocery store get it from? And he said, what are you talking about? It's just there. No.
That guy.
One of the biggest problems humans have is they assume if I know it, so do you. And that is most people. So this guy's perspective is, I believe it's true that milk is just at the grocery store.
Where you get it.
I'm not going to give any of these people the benefit of the doubt when they advocate for something like universal basic income to an extreme degree, because I understand there's some things that we could probably discuss in terms of that, but to an extreme degree where it's like, social distribution of all funding. And when I try to explain it to them, their argument is quite literally UBI works because the food is just sitting there, and if I had the money, I could have it. And then I'm like, the money serves a purpose. It lubricates the economy. It is the medium of exchange so that energy can move from one place to another. Without the system in place, it doesn't work. And they're just like, but milk is at the grocery store.
You said you.
Here's an interesting little aside since we mentioned the World Economic Forum. And I read the Klaus Schwab's books, right? So I read
The Klaus Schwab.
The Klaus Schwab.
The Schwab and
The Schwab. The Anal Schwab.
The Schwab.
The Anal
He
Schwab of the
talks
Klaus.
like a Bond villain.
He looks and sounds. He's right out of
Everyone
Central
knew
Casting.
Palpatine was going to be the Emperor. It was
Maybe,
pretty obvious.
Maybe
if
the
you saw
only
first
reason,
Star
hold
Wars
on,
movie.
maybe he's right. The only reason we don't trust him is because he seems like a Bond villain.
Yeah.
We were talking about this earlier.
Maybe
let's
he
deep
is.
fake him. Let's put a less Bond villainy looking face
He
on
may be
his
the
head.
anti-hero.
Is this real?
Yes.
It's real, dude.
That's not real.
It turns
Well,
out people
He's
ask
dressed
me-
like a Sith.
I,
He looks like Darth Vader. He looks like what Anakin was wearing when he turns into Darth
I
Vader.
think they're just getting
know.
bold. Like Hillary Clinton dresses like a dictator and always has. It's
She
a
does.
weird thing where
She
they just
dresses like
they
Kim
almost
Jong-un.
they either just don't understand how bad it looks or they're trying to test the waters, see what they can get away with.
Okay,
I don't
wait,
know.
Hold on.
I actually know the explanation for this outfit, but
Explain
I don't
this.
want to tell people the explanation because it's funny.
I love
That to not know what it is. It is literally there's some weird university in Europe that gave him a doctorate, and that instead of the normal doctorate robes, that's what they wear.
So it's like,
Wow.
he's like a Sith.
It's academic regalia in like some Sith university of Lithuania or something like that.
Sith. Okay, wait.
You know what
with-
they
with
learned at that
university
You know what they learned at the university?
Dracula.
The Jedi wouldn't tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So who is this guy? Tell us about Klaus Schwab.
So Klaus Schwab is the chairman of the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum was his brainchild back in 1971. He comes up with this idea, the World Economic Forum. The idea is to bring big corporate leaders together with government leaders, with NGO leaders, with other movers and shakers, I guess, like Greta Thunberg, and get them to rub elbows in massive fancy ski resorts and these kind of future visionary kind of how are we going to shape future society meetings that for very many years were famously held in Davos in
I've been to
Switzerland.
Davos for the World Economic Forum.
Really?
Not actually at the forum, but in the peripheral events.
Oh yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's him. And so he wrote this series of books. His first book, which I actually have not yet read, I've only skimmed through it. I have it. Is called Stakeholder Capitalism. So his goal is to shift capitalism out of a shareholder model into a stakeholder model where there will be these unelected technocrats, experts like Bill Gates, who are going to tell us what the right virus policy or environmental policy or
Well,
what
Bill Gates
social policy or whatever.
is a famous scientist, right?
Well, he's a famous computer guy. I don't know.
Computer
that
scientist.
He's not a scientist.
He's a computer guy. He
Oh,
in a
well,
monopolist.
So he's a famous medical doctor.
I don't think
You
he's
would think
medical
so,
A
though.
virologist.
No, not in my.
He
to
works
my
in
range of
medical in
knowledge.
some way.
No, he talks about it a lot. I think he works
Well,
in
that's
medical in the sense of genetically engineering mosquitoes to give you herpes or something. That's slander. He doesn't really do that. He does it to give you AIDS. I'm just kidding.
No,
he did-
no, it's what he's literally doing is genetically engineering him and his foundation, I believe. Genetically engineer mosquitoes that are like sterile, so they can't reproduce or
So
something.
that to eradicate malaria, that was one of the projects. He's actually talked. I don't know how far the research is. He's actually talked about modifying mosquitoes to get them to deliver vaccines as well,
That's terrifying.
what?
which is scary.
I know.
Where
I think
I'm
he
gonna
I
Google
think he
What do you
said
mean?
that, but he actually bought a bunch of stock in the mosquito spray
Yeah,
companies, so he
right.
knows everyone's going to load up on that stuff.
What's the difference between shareholder and
I'm just want to point out that I'm well past the point of hearing something that sounds insane and immediately saying it's insane, because when we had Alex Jones on
Yeah.
and he told us we were eating cloned beef and I was like, no, we're not. And then I Googled it and it's just true. And then
whoops.
Luke Rudkowski was like, Bill Gates funded microchips to for microchip birth control for women. And I was like, Luke, come on. And then I Googled it and it's just like
There it is.
Reuters reports it.
Fucking
So we have
true.
science.org, NewsGuard certified, 100 out of 100. Researchers turn
Ooh.
mosquitoes into flying vaccinators.
As I was saying. So anyway,
They do say it's unlikely to take off, but your point was that it was being funded.
it's being floated and funded. Yeah. So anyway,
Creepy.
stakeholder capitalism is that we replace shareholder decision making with stakeholder decision making. So these are technocrats, experts. The experts will tell us what the right environmental, social, and corporate governance policy, ESG policy, will be to run a company successfully in a sustainable and inclusive way. That's the language they use.
And a stakeholder, for instance.
Stakeholder is somebody who represents people who they claim hold a stake in what comes out. So if an oil company, for instance, creates pollution either directly or indirectly by selling its product, there are climate experts who are going to be representative stakeholders that are going to dictate what that oil company can do and can't do
So the victims of corporate waste are the stakeholders in this situation?
No. Experts are experts who are appointed by other experts in a closed network become the stakeholders.
Why don't we do this?
Why don't we do this?
Let's make the
They've got a good track record.
Fredamastani Economic Forum.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Will be held at my new ranch, Fredamistan, and I'll be the Klaus Schwab. And you can be the Chrystia Freeland. Is that her name?
Yes, I can be the Canadian.
The Canadian.
Like, number 2.
Okay, thanks. I didn't want to.
I need your cat so I can.
Yeah, I don't want to
slowly
derail.
stroke.
So it's taking it away from the shareholders, which are the people that have stock in the companies,
Yes.
being like, I want the company to do this. You said this.
Yes.
To a new unappointed electorate of experts.
Yes.
Controlling the economy from the top behind the
Yes.
scenes. Okay.
Correct. And I can explain how that works. But we're still talking about who Klaus Schwab is and what his ideas are. So I could tell you, because I brought him up to
let's
talk
do
about
this.
his book. And so it turns out he's got a number of books. Fourth Industrial Revolution is a book he wrote in 2016, maybe 15. I'd have to double check the date, but thereabouts. And he talks about how we're transitioning into an entirely new world. We're going through, because of high-tech digital stuff, we're going into an entirely new world. There's synthetic biology. There's all these new high-tech things. Everything is so complex. He says there's so much velocity to the changes. Moore's law. He invokes a lot of sciencey sounding things. He says we're in a quantum state, which that's always really great. And I don't think he's talking just about quantum computers. He's like, it's quantum business or something like. And so it's like Deepak Chopra at that point, who is also works with the World Economic Forum.
Really?
Yes. And so anyway, the point I wanted to raise was that in his book that he wrote in 2020, in June or July of 2020, called COVID-19, let me say this very clearly because it's a conspiracy theory. Klaus Schwab, who directs this gigantic future-facing World Economic Forum that has sought since 1971 to remake the world economy and all of its tools, and has brought together the biggest world leaders in governance, corporations, and institutions to help do so in a yearly meeting, plus having thousands of employees, or at least hundreds of employees worldwide. He wrote a book called, let me not stutter, COVID-19, The Great Reset. That's the title of
When
the
did
book.
that book come out?
In June or July of 2020. Seems quick, doesn't it?
Perhaps.
Like 4 months into the pandemic, which was a very narrow window of opportunity to remake our global economy. As he described
you
it.
read the book?
I did read that book. I live tweeted about half of it because I read that part in the back of a car.
How much of it directly talks specifically about COVID-19?
Almost all
All
of
of
it.
it, wow.
Virtually all of it. And how it can be used as a representative problem, that the scale of problems that we face.
I'll be honest, I don't think he wrote it. He probably hired someone, you know what I mean? He probably brought in a ghostwriter, and he probably spent a few days telling him, write this.
Yeah, I don't know.
Crank it out. You know what I mean?
I don't know any of the circumstances around that. That's possible. Everything he writes and says sounds to me virtually the same. He writes a lot of this kind of visionary pablum, and then all of a sudden he has this one weird paragraph in each of his books, because I've read 3 of them, and it's like, that's why we need global cooperation and a world government to usher us through these dangerous changes that we're having that are coming so fast. And in this long-winded explanation of who Klaus Schwab is and where we go, and I was building up to this Great Reset book. I have to remember what was the point of what he said in the Great. Oh yeah, we were talking about this supply chain kind of universe. So he's dead wrong in this book. He's explaining at that point that what's going to happen is people are going to be so scared of pandemics that as we come out of 2021 or so, what we're going to face is a massive demand crisis. People won't be willing to engage in goods and services anymore. And so now we're going to have this problem where employers aren't going to be able to employ people at all because there's no demand for the products, because nobody wants to go back into a virus-ridden society, and they're all scared and they're all hiding in their basements like Joe Biden did before the election. And as it turns out, we have the exact opposite problem. We're trying to pay kids $20-something bucks to flip burgers at McDonald's, and they won't do it. This is the UBI thing, right? So UBI is actually kind of in his whole program. This is how you're going to have a more inclusive economy. You give more people money, they're more included into the economy. They can participate in the economy. They have resources to participate. He actually talks about the inclusive economy in this regard. And so it actually creates exactly the opposite scenario that he's warning about. He's literally dead wrong. But this guy, for our technocratic experts, is the expert of the expert of the experts. That's really, he's the kingmaker among who gets to be these experts who are going to dictate everything. And as I was saying to Tim just a second ago, these guys have quite a track record of getting some pretty consequential shit wrong, as we've all seen over the last 3 years, as we say in the South.
Do you know, we read this quote once, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he said something to the effect of, if these leaders, these elites believe that humans are so, incapable that they need special individuals who can lead them, what sets those people apart? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I can't remember what the exact quote
Yeah.
was, something to that effect.
Well, I mean, the general idea that, if you can't trust people with freedom, how can you trust them with power?
If you can't trust people to do the right thing,
Yeah.
why would that exclude the global elites?
Well,
You know what I mean?
exactly. And here's the thing. I do believe that obviously at some point you need to defer to authority on certain things, but we're not selecting people to be in positions of authority based on their moral character at all. In fact, we're told we shouldn't even account for that. We should just try to look at their policies without questioning what kind of person they are. None of the people who are in charge of basically anything consequential have done anything that I think any of us would consider really morally impressive.
Well, I mean, that's what these guys, this is the same thing that we already have been circling around a couple of times, is they see themselves as morally superior to everybody.
Yeah.
They have, so Klaus's vision, if we're going to be as charitable to him as possible, is that the world has entered into a new phase because of high technology, computers, AI, automation and robots, synthetic biology, the capability apparently to unleash pandemics, which he ominously mentions in kind of weird ways throughout his books. Yeah, I mean, like lots of these geoengineering, even like he casually mentions in one of his books, The Great Narrative, the newest one, that maybe we'll just block out the sun to stop for a while to stop.
Could a
global
small nuclear
warming.
war prevent global warming? Remember that one?
Right,
That
I
was
just
from
saw
10
that,
years
yeah.
ago.
Yeah, that was 10 years ago. And, so they just casually flirt with these ideas. So he says, well, because of these changes that are coming to the world anyway, because of the rapid changes in technology, et cetera, what we need is people who are really informed about what these things mean to shepherd us through so they don't become calamities, like, say, COVID-19. They become something that we shepherd and use to the benefit of all. And then it's all, how do we get there? Global cooperation, global governance. Who's going to be in charge of it? Well, my merry band of experts. We have climate experts, we have technology experts, we have AI experts, we have all these like what's it named Harari or whatever, Yuval Harari or whatever. He had a World Economic Forum video 2019, 18, something like this, and he's talking about we're going to hack humans. Like, they are a hackable system. We're going to figure out how to hack humans like we hack computers. They're basically just software.
But are they talking about the human mind, or are they talking about the human body?
I think both.
And the muscle, it's the
'Cause
neurons in the
the-
muscle and the stomach. And
And
the
we would
brain.
have to look up his exact argument. It's been a little bit since I've seen it, but
The human mind is actually remarkably easy to hack in a rudimentary sense. The majority of hacks, when they'll be like hackers broke into a computer, it's actually human manipulation.
that's right. That's exactly right. Which is why, for example, why are they making your kids at school fill out all these damn surveys all the time? Like, literally, survey after survey. What are they doing?
I didn't hear about this.
Oh, God. This is under the brand of social and emotional learning. They're constantly trying to learn more about the children so they can do the social emotional learning interventions or whatever it is, which turned out to be Maoism, by the way. But they're also making them fill out these surveys. And so they're constantly like, how much money do your parents make? What are your views about this? How do you feel about the boobs that you're growing when you're a 12-year-old girl? Like, that's real. I've seen that. It's North Carolina. That's real. How do you feel about the changes to your body? You're growing pubic hair. How do you feel about that? Do
That's
people
so
look at you?
creepy. Yeah.
And so they're filling out these things. And the goal is to create unique profiles for every single individual in society, very much like what we heard about, whether real or not, from Cambridge Analytica, where they were using personality profiles and then injecting that into people's social media to influence their voting habits, influence political behavior, influence speech, influence thought, so that the thought never enters the mind of the reactionary. Influence buying habits. Did I say that one already?
There are a lot of ties between Cambridge and the World Economic Forum.
Of course there are.
Yeah.
And so this is the idea, is that you're actually going to, that's level one. Level two is if these fools get neural implants where we're literally hooking our brains to the internet, then you could directly hack.
You ever watch